Hello, it's Alex and welcome to Hey Little Thrifter. First up, I want to state that Black Lives Matter. I know I can do better in being supportive, and I'm going to leave some links in the description below of ways that we can all help. There are petitions to be signed, places you can donate money if you're able to, and we can buy books written by Black authors. We can buy books from Black owned bookshops. There's going to be information about that in the description below as well. I hope that I am talking with like-minded people here, but if that is not the case, then I suggest you either educate yourself or fuck off, quite frankly. I'm going to keep this brief, not because there isn't a lot more to say, but because I think there are other voices that need to be heard right now. We need to be listening to Black voices right now, and not just today and tomorrow, but every day. But I did want to bring this up and make it clear where I stand, and I decided to add this into one of my regular videos because I think more people would watch it that way, and also I'm going to be talking about the books I read in May, and I read all white authors that month, and I'll be the first to realise that and recognise that and enforce the fact that I can and will do better. So if you're not fussed about hearing about these books, then thank you for watching this far, I appreciate it. So what did I read in May? First up, I read Falling Angel by William Hjortsberg. This is from the late 70s and it's a noir detective story but mixed with some horror elements, and I buddy read this with my friend Emily, and we both had a really good time with this one. This is set in 1950s New York City, and we are following private detective Harry Angel, who is hired by someone to look into the whereabouts of a man called Johnny Favourite. He used to be a somewhat famous singer before the war, and then on his return from the war he disappeared, and there are conflicting stories about his whereabouts, and Harry Angel has been hired to try and track him down. This is an excellent novel. It's really well written. His descriptions and his details and just the way that he writes is really well done. I really enjoyed it, and it really puts you in that time and place. Like, you could really feel like you were in 1950s New York. This book was adapted into the film Angel Heart, which stars Mickey Rourke and Lisa Bonet and Robert De Niro, and I had seen the film some years ago and remember quite enjoying it, but I actually couldn't remember enough of the storyline to know where it ended up. So reading the book was kind of like experiencing it for the first time anyway, so that was really good. Nothing was spoiled for me, and the way that the story plays out is fantastic. It's hard to say too much more about it without spoiling things, but there's a really interesting cast of characters. There is a bunch of different elements. There's like the jazz music scene of the era, there is voodoo, there is black magic, and as Harry Angel looks further and further into this case, the stakes get higher and higher, and it was just a really great read. Like, it was just a really good time, very compelling, and I ended up rating this one 4 stars. Next, I read Victoria by Ruby Jean Jensen. This is a reissue of her original novel, and I was very kindly sent this by the publisher for an honest review. And this is another of her creepy doll stories, which are always a good time, and this one was no exception. I rated this one 3.5 stars, and I did a separate review video for it, so I'll leave that linked below if you want to go check it out. Then I read books 1, 2 and 3 of the Witches series by James Darke. There are 8 books in the series, but I only have the first 3, and I read these together and really enjoyed them. I have a separate review video for these as well, which I highly recommend checking out if you haven't seen it yet. I'll leave that linked below. And this was a series originally published in 1983. It is set in the 17th century in England during the witch hunting days, and yeah, they're a really entertaining mix of horror and adventure and like historical fiction. There's some kind of good gruesome moments, there is some sexual content, and yeah, it was just all around a good time. I ended up rating each of these 4 stars, and yeah, I would like to continue with the rest of the series if I can track the books down. They're a bit hard to find, so we will see. Next up, I read Shrine by James Herbert. This is another 80s novel and another British author. Yeah, I went on like an unintentional British author kind of phase. And this one is set in a small town in England, and it is about a young girl who is deaf and mute, and she, one day while she is in the area of the local church, she witnesses something, and all of a sudden she is able to hear and speak again, and people see it as a miracle, and so the church gets involved and everyone is talking about it. And the main character here is a journalist called Jerry Fenn, and he initially writes a story on what happened, and the story goes from there as it kind of explodes in the media around the world, and the small town is inundated with other people travelling there in the hopes of finding their own miracle and cure to various illnesses, etc. The journalist Fenn is a skeptic, so he has an interesting point of view in covering this story, and he gets very involved in what is going on. We also see the point of view of many other characters. We follow the priest of that church, who is quickly becoming overwhelmed by what is happening in his usually very quiet parish. There are other members of the church higher up who become involved. There are also some local businessmen who see this as a great money-making opportunity to expand their businesses in the local area and yeah, make more money off the tourists that are coming through. And of course we have this young girl who is the centre of all of this, and she is kind of on the one hand being protected by the adults around her, but also she seems to be the key to what is happening, and there are a few other instances where she is present and miracles have seemingly occurred. Yeah, I won't say where exactly this story goes because I really enjoyed finding out for myself, but I definitely recommend checking it out if that premise sounds intriguing to you. James Herbert's writing is really great and I enjoyed his characters. I think my main problem with this novel was that it just felt a bit too long. There were certain times when it felt like it got a bit bogged down in details, and there were certain sections of the book that I just felt didn't need to be as lengthy as they were to get the same point across. So initially I'd rated this 4 stars upon finishing it, but I ended up dropping it down a little to 3.5 purely because of that. But overall I did really enjoy the story, and yeah, it had some great creepy moments. It's got like a mystery element as this journalist is kind of uncovering what might be behind the things going on, and then it all ends in this pretty amazing and lengthy climax. So yeah, this was a good one, and I recently heard that it's being adapted into a film, so yeah, I would be curious to check that out. And the next book in this impromptu British author's theme was The Cormorant by Stephen Gregory. This is from 1986, and this was his debut novel, and it's a pretty short one. It's like less than 200 pages long, but wow, there is so much packed into this book. It feels like it's just so well crafted, and his writing is really fantastic. This is about a couple and their young son who moved to Wales because the main character's uncle recently passed away and left his cottage in Wales to him, and they decide to quit their jobs and their lives that they are kind of unhappy with and decide to, pack up, move to Wales and start a new life there together. And the caveat for moving into the cottage is that they must also take care of a cormorant, which was a pet of the uncle. So the couple think, it's a bit of a bizarre situation, not your everyday one, but they think can't be that big of a deal. We are ready to move off to the country and get away from our jobs, so seems like an okay compromise. But they quickly find that taking care of this bird is much more than they had realised, and not just in the sense of its needs, but in the way that it affects them and their relationships with each other and their lives as a whole. I ended up rating this one 4 stars. The way that the story unfolds was really well done. There are some creepy moments, there are some really intense moments, there are some really uncomfortable and unsettling moments in here too. I'm not gonna lie, there are probably a couple of things in here that aren't gonna be things that maybe everyone wants to read. So yeah, I think I might do a separate review video for this one. If you'd be interested in that, then do let me know. I do have a review up already on Goodreads if you want to go give that a read. But yeah, this one was excellent and I'm really looking forward to reading more by him. And then I finished off the month with not one but 2 point horror books. The first one being The Perfume by Caroline B. Cooney. This one I picked up because it was the topic for the most recent episode of Don't Point That Horror at Me, which is one of my favourite podcasts. I'll leave that linked below too. And yeah, they basically pick one of the point horror books each month and talk about it at length. It's really fun, and this was one I'd been wanting to reread for a while anyway, so that worked out really well. This is about a teenage girl called Dove who is drawn to this new perfume that's just been released called Venom, and once she buys it and smells it, she unwittingly unleashes a part of her personality that she didn't know was there. Yeah, this one is a pretty bonkers one. It definitely doesn't follow your typical point horror storyline, so yeah, it's cool that it definitely does its unique thing, and it has a lot of back and forth between these 2 different personalities. They're each vying for control of the body. I think Caroline B. Cooney definitely has a unique voice within this kind of era of teen horror. Her books are always just that little bit darker and a little bit weirder, and she has an interesting writing style that I really like. So yeah, I did enjoy this one. I did find it got a bit repetitive in the storyline, and it was somewhat ambiguous, but it was a good one, and I rated it 3.5 stars. And last up, I read The Waitress by Sinclair Smith. This is one that I definitely remember having when I was a kid, but I could not remember the storyline at all. But this one is about another teenage girl called Paula, and she has recently moved to a new town, started at a new school, and she is also starting a new part-time job at the local diner. but things don't go very well for her because she lied to get the job by saying that she had previous waitressing experience when she doesn't, and her new boss is a little bit kind of, one minute she's really friendly and helpful and the next minute she is kind of mean, and Paula feels like she's on to her for having lied. And also things at school aren't going particularly well because there's another girl there, like one of the popular girls, who is interested in this particular guy, but this guy is showing an interest in Paula. So yeah, this girl is trying to put Paula off and move out of her way, basically, with regards to this guy. So yeah, there are a few different things going on, and Paula becomes the victim of various things that happen that are clearly meant to scare her, but you know, who is doing it and why. And I ended up enjoying this one more than I thought I would. This was definitely your more typical point horror fare, so yeah, it was good fun, and it did kind of seem to lose it a bit towards the end, but overall it was a good time and I rated it 3 stars. So that was everything I read in May. Let me know if you've read any of these. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you ever so much for watching. Hopefully I will see you again in my next video.